We would like to welcome back to Soul today, Suzanne Edwards. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us again today.
Steve, I just love being here. It's great. Thank you very much.
Now, last time you were here, you spoke about TM.
Yes.
But today we're talking about something else. Let's see if I get this correct. Ayurveda.
Oh, well done. See, we practiced.
I'm getting better. Yeah.
Yes.
So, for people like myself who are listening and watching this, tell us a bit about that. What is it?
Ayurveda is the Vedic system of healthcare. It's, according to the World Health Organization, the most complete system of natural healthcare, so we should be interested in understanding what it is.
Absolutely.
Ayur means life and Veda means complete knowledge. So that gives you a hint as to what it's about. So it's a very comprehensive system of natural healthcare.
Right.
And it's actually what I trained in before I became interested in knowing more about transcendental meditation. So it's more primary to that in the sense that it encompasses consciousness. It encompasses our environment, encompasses our own physiology, our daily lifestyle, our belief systems. It encompasses everything that is to do with our life. And it says you're special, you're unique, you're you. And it doesn't expect everyone to be the same. And so it's a system that has a very broad holistic scope, and yet it individualises every recommendation for the person in front of them. So as a practitioner and a consultant of Ayurveda, I would take your pulse and I would with 3 fingers feel on your radial pulse what's going on in your physiology.
Now, 3 fingers, that's interesting.
3 fingers on the radial pulse, and we feel through the fingertips what's going on in the impulses that are there in the bloodstream. You see, your blood comes into contact with every single cell in your body.
Yes.
And within the cell is the DNA, the powerhouse of intelligence. And that DNA reverberates. It has a quality to it. Sometimes it's happy, sometimes not so happy. Sometimes it's lively, sometimes it's making mistakes. And so a practitioner who is very highly trained and has a level of consciousness which is there that can actually feel what's going on in the pulse. They can feel what's going on in your brain and how it's communicating with your gut.
Right.
What's happening in your bones? How are they turning over? How is your food being digested? How is your body constructing itself? And how is it turning over? And so we can actually get a snapshot of the whole physiology without sending you off for $600 worth of tests.
Oh, that's good to know.
And so we can take the pulse, which is the primary way of determining what's going on at that moment in that particular individual in the way their physiology is functioning. And then with that knowledge, we can look at some recommendations and draw from this big holistic field of knowledge as to what could that person do that would be the most beneficial for them at that time to improve their level of balance, wholeness, wellness and happiness, and to bring them back to functioning normally and functioning in a way that enlivens the body's intelligence and maintains it so that they have longevity of health.
Right. So once do you call it a reading?
As a pulse, you take the pulse.
Right,
Yeah,
you take the pulse. Once you've taken that and you've got an idea about what's happening within the system there, what type of practices do you employ to help rebalance that system?
Yeah, well, this is where it's really interesting because it's such a broad area of knowledge. The practitioner will have to be knowledgeable in many different areas. And then the skill really is, and it comes with many years of experience also, knowing exactly which thing to employ that will assist that person in that particular level of imbalance. So there might be a problem where that person, for instance, has a problem with their digestion.
Right.
And they don't have a good appetite. And so then it's a matter of looking at their daily routine. When are they eating? How are they eating? What are they thinking about when they're eating? What type of food are they eating? Yes, but that's probably secondary. And so we might look at diet, but daily routine. We might also look at the person's stress levels, might look at, all different areas that would be to do with that and their understanding of that. And then knowledge is needed. So you educate the person so that they know what to do, how to do it. They feel comfortable and you fill in any gaps and ignorance that they have and some distorted ideas. And then you get to a situation where you make a couple of recommendations that will fit in with their lifestyle. And so the skill is in having a broad and huge value of knowledge and then bringing it back down to some basic principles that often people will say, wow, my grandmother used to talk about that. And I say, well, that's fantastic. That really gives you an idea that these are tried and true and tested things
Yes.
that have been around for a millennium and known to be really good and used to be part of our culture. But our culture's been lost.
Yes.
And as we've lost our culture, then we've lost all of these ways of living and things that could be done naturally. And sometimes we think, oh, I really feel like drinking hot water like I am today because it's a cold day. And I really feel like that. But no. I would just drink my bottle of ice cold water. That's what comes out of the water fountain. But it's really not appropriate.
It's interesting. I heard someone say the other day that it's fascinating that a lot of people refer to natural medicines as alternative medicines.
Yes.
And yet up until about 80 years ago, they were mainstream, and now they've become alternative. But for thousands of years, they were the mainstream medicine. People are starting to understand that again and reclaim that knowledge, don't you think?
I think if I broke my leg, I'd go to the doctor. In fact, I'd go to the emergency centre,
Sure.
definitely. But a lot of what happens pre-disease, and particularly pre-chronic disease, can be preventable just by the knowledge that's missing in society.
And this
so
is
we
what
know
you're-
that.
This
We know
is
that.
what you're doing really
This
helps.
is where I
isn't
work,
it?
yeah. This is where we're educating and filling in those gaps. We weren't taught how to get pregnant. We weren't taught how to look after ourselves during pregnancy. We weren't taught a lot about childbirth or about how to care for small children or look after ourselves when we're mothering.
Yes.
We weren't really taught how to deal with a lot of women's issues, how to deal with menopause, how to deal with an ageing mother. All of those issues just aren't part of our education, and the knowledge isn't being passed down from generation to generation. So there are big holes there in how to deal with that. And the knowledge that's there of how to deal with disease is very surface level and fragmented. And mainly it's a very small kit bag that your GP has that he can offer. So we do find these days that most doctors are actually into integrative medicine. It's an area now in other countries, maybe not so much in Australia, where 50% of doctors are retraining into integrative medicine because they need to be able to prevent the problem. The early detection testing, it's okay, but I'd rather take the pulse and know before you even get a symptom what's happening in your physiology and be able to prevent it.
Actually,
That's prevention.
on that point about doctors, after your last visit here on Soul to Soul, we had a lot of people mention to us that their doctors had recommended TM as a way of bringing about stress release in their field. I suppose that's where the TM works very well with what you're doing here.
Yeah, well, TM or transcendental meditation is the medicinal value of meditation in a way, in the sense that it's very profound in what it does, and it has a data set that's very clearly defining it from the results of other types of meditation. So medically, yes, it can be something that doctors can with confidence recommend. And they know that when they recommend specifically transcendental meditation, they're going to be having people instructed in such a way that they're going to learn a skill that will give a desired outcome.
Yes.
So it's a bit different to other types of things. But consciousness is the basic value of our physiology. Consciousness is basic. And so when we enliven consciousness by transcending thought and our awareness being there on that level of intelligence, we're actually enlivening the basis of the physiology, because consciousness creates DNA, RNA, proteins, cells, organs, the whole physiology.
Yes.
And so when we work on that level and we clear the pathways of intelligence so that the intelligence that's functioning in DNA can be replicated out into the cells without making mistakes. It's these mistakes and twists in the intelligence that mean that we replicate the whole mistake again and again and again, because none of you was here 3 months ago.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Part of you was, but it's not that physical part of you. And so most of your body's being replaced all the time.
Yes.
And yet we keep replacing the mistakes. And this is because of a lack of connection with the field of intelligence underlying the physiology, which is consciousness. And so this is why the understanding in integrative medicine is there that, yes, my patient may not be sleeping well, and I can recommend they go to bed early, and I can recommend they take some chemicals to help them feel dull and dozy and fall asleep. But actually the problem is stress. And 80% of all disease comes because of psychosomatic reasons or stress.
Right. Yeah.
And the doctor may not be able to deal with that stress, and talking about it isn't going to change it. But they could dissolve that stress out of their physiology by learning how to transcend and give the mind rest and the body follow, and dissolve all the stress out of there. And then automatically the person will feel calmer. Their mind will be more at peace. They'll be more relaxed, and they'll be able to fall asleep and stay more soundly asleep, and get that rest, and then wake up and not have the anxiety that was creating the doubts and worries.
Exactly, yeah. Which
So-
is no doubt why the doctors are recommending
They do. So they
meditation
say,
now.
but usually they'll say, learn to meditate. Maybe some meditation. I guess it's inherent in my fault. I need to go and educate the doctors. I need to go and knock on the doors and say, hey, when you're recommending meditation, we all know meditation is good for us now. Now, largely, I believe that's because of the research that's been published on specifically transcendental meditation.
Yes.
There's hundreds of studies that have been published in the major journals. But the thing is that the doctors aren't really sure. The CSIRO said it's good for you. The American Heart Association has told the doctors it's good for them. But they're really not clearly recommending. They're just saying learn to meditate. And a lot of people fall through the cracks then. They go to a yoga class. They get some benefit, definitely. But they're learning concentration or contemplation, a relaxation technique, but it's not medical. It's not actually helping them to sleep better. It's not changing their blood pressure. And so really it's on that level now where people are looking for more. They don't want the side effects, but they do want something to help them with the solution. And the big problem often comes down to stress. It often comes down to the mind and the way the mind's operating, because the mind leads the body. So the primary aspect of Maharishi Ayurveda is this holistic understanding of Ayurveda, this complete knowledge of Ayurveda, and that's why we put the word Maharishi, which means great knowledge.
Right.
And so then Maharishi Ayurveda is this understanding of consciousness as the primary aspect of the 40 aspects that we look at. And we'll look at everything from diet, daily routine, herbal formulas you can take, massage, exercise through yoga, breathing techniques, all sorts of wonderful things, music you can listen to, sounds affect us, all these beautiful things. The house you live in, it's like a home your body lives in.
Yes.
This is the home
Your
your body's
temple,
in.
yeah.
Yeah. And so the way that is, the way we're facing when we're doing things, how we sleep, that's all affected very much because the whole universe affects us. Even the planets are affecting us.
Yes.
All of that's included in Maharishi Ayurveda.
Right.
But the primary thing is consciousness. Doesn't matter where you're living. Doesn't matter what you're eating. If your thinking is not evolutionary and balanced and gentle on yourself, doesn't matter.
It sounds like you could describe it, the dynamics of energy interaction.
Yeah, well, everything in the universe is energy.
Exactly, yeah.
Energy and intelligence.
Yes,
I mean, there's
indeed.
that unified field of physics, which is a field of interacting self, interacting energy and intelligence, which creates all thought and all matter. And so consciousness is the basis of all thought and all matter.
Yes.
And so this is understood by physics, when they go and look at the unified field and they try and do an experiment to see how it works, because it's this amazing field of all intelligence, all creativity or harmony or energy from which everything comes. But when the scientist puts his attention on the experiment, it changes it.
Yes.
Because it's a field of consciousness, and when you put your attention on it, it enlivens
You're
it.
becoming
And that's
entangled with it,
why
yes.
we meditate. Why do we meditate? Why do people think, what is meditation? Meditation means to think. But why we meditate is because we want to transcend thinking. We want to transcend those surface layers of the mind and have the mind settle down and conscious mind experience consciousness,
Yes.
which is that unified field of intelligence and creativity at the source of thought. And then that will enliven that intelligence. So, of course, the brain will restructure itself, think more broadly, think more deeply, comprehend better, restructure the neural pathways, but the physiology through every cell will change. And then when we take the pulse, what we feel is, lively intelligence, intelligence which is turning over in an evolutionary manner, and all of the parts are connected with the whole. If we have some area of the physiology that isn't working, we might have some growth somewhere. It's really just an individual area in the physiology which has lost connection with the whole. And those cells are running rampant doing naughty stuff.
It's bizarre things.
And they
yes.
don't realise that they're part of an integrated system. So it's kind of like, a few individuals doing the wrong thing in society. On the bigger scale, that's what it is.
Yes.
And they've just lost connection. And why are they doing graffiti on the building? Sometimes beautiful, but sometimes not so beautiful. But why are they doing that? Why are they destroying something? Why are they bringing something down? It's just they've lost connection with the whole. And so consciousness transcending brings us back home, so that we reintegrate and establish ourselves on that level of that holistic style of unbounded awareness. And we enliven that, and then every cell changes, and then our mind changes as well.
Yes. Okay, well, that all makes a lot of sense to me. A lot of sense at all. Being someone that's done a lot of work with energy dynamics over the years,
Yes.
Seeing it in that sense puts it into a really nice perspective for me. So I'm guessing that once you've diagnosed someone and you've worked out what's going on there, there's a series of different techniques and different things that you would recommend that they could do to bring that balance back into the body?
Yeah, absolutely. And Ayurveda works on that very, very general principle that if something's too cold, you best make it warm. If something's too hot, then you best make it cooler.
Right.
And so you bring in the opposite value. And it works on the principle of nourishment. And so balance and nourishment are the two things. There are different systems, Often if something's not working in your physiology, in allopathic medicine, your general practitioner will give you something to substitute the functioning. So if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling a bit down, anxious, then they'll give you some serotonin replacements.
Right.
But when you feed those replacements into the system, do you think that's going to encourage your body to produce more serotonin?
I would guess not,
Yeah.
but I guess it's a stopgap measure while they're
that's
correcting
right.
other issues.
That's right. So while the serotonin replacements are coming in, it's actually making that whole system more lazy. And so it actually will turn off that system a long term, because the body says, well, you've got enough. You don't need to make any more.
Yes,
And so the system, in a sense, says, okay, we'll stop work. Because there's plenty coming into the system, we can detect that. We don't need to produce any more serotonin. The other way that systems often work is that they force things. They go, well, hang on, guys, you're on strike. You're not making serotonin. We'll push you. We'll say, come on, guys, let's make some more serotonin, please. And they'll try and trigger the body by often doing the opposite. These ways aren't used in Ayurvedic medicine. In Ayurvedic medicine, we say, hey, you guys aren't working so well. You're not making the serotonin the way we'd like you to. Well, then we'll nourish you. We'll take care of you. Here, have a pillow. Have a nice warm blanket. In that sense, we're like, would you like a better workplace?
Yeah.
Or would you like me to clean things up around you? Would you like me to give you the building blocks to make more of that serotonin? And so in that way, in Ayurvedic medicine, the body is nourished. And the whole metabolic pathway pre the production of serotonin is also looked at, as well as the distribution of serotonin, so the whole mechanism of that production. And so that can be done on many different levels. It may be that, yes, of course, it might be necessary initially for there to be some replacement of serotonin into the system, but often it's actually just that there's a blockage in the system.
Right.
That the pipes aren't working, the intelligence is lost. And so Ayurveda works on that principle. So it will nourish that area and enliven the intelligence in that area. And it may be done with plants and minerals and herbs and things like this. They work like tuning forks. And so if you get a tuning fork and you make a noise with something, it has an effect. And so if you put something into your physiology, it'll have an effect. And so these herbal formulas can be used like tuning forks.
Right.
Put it into the body goes, oh, I remember how to do that. And a little bit later, put it in, oh, yes, okay, I remember how to do that correctly. And eventually you can remove the tuning fork and the body will sing.
Right.
And so in this way, it's nourishing and balancing the physiology in this way. So a lot of the modalities that are used in Maharishi Ayurveda are on this level of nourishment and bringing in the opposite value.
Right. Does it become more difficult when you're dealing with people that have had long-term issues, where it's become ingrained, a way of life to a certain degree?
In some ways it's easy,
Okay.
because when there's a lot of darkness and you turn on a light, you get a big result. You get a really big result. So it's often black and white. And often you can recommend something very, very simple. You know, often I'll have people come to me who just don't sleep well. They might be getting on in age, so they're in that area of life where one of the main principles in Ayurveda called Vata, we haven't gone through these yet, but we will. There's 3 main general guiding principles in Ayurveda. And these principles are the 5 elements in nature broken down into 3 governing principles called Vata, Pitta and Kapha. And Vata is that general principle which guides all transportation in this nervous system and throughout the whole physiology. And as we age, we go into later stages of life and our Vata increases naturally. And so if we're in winter, which is a Vata predominated season because it's cold and dry, like the qualities of Vata, then it's winter and you're in that stage of life, and you might have a body type or a constitution that's predominated more by Vata, because we're all different. We all have a different proportion of those 3.
Yes.
And then that person may not sleep well. They may have dryness building up in the body. They might find that their bones are becoming brittle. And that person will come to me and they'll say, I haven't slept for years. I have very chronic insomnia. And I have a whole other raft of things. Yes, okay. And something very simple, like suggesting they drink hot water with a slice of ginger in it. And that will improve their digestion, get more nourishment into the system, more liquid, and open up the channels. The warmth will pacify that Vata, settle down their nervous system. Maybe a massage, self-massage with some beautiful oils, which will then nourish again the system, improve. Of course, it's going to nourish the adipose tissue as well. It's going to soak right in through all of the dermis layers, and it's going to give the building blocks for making the hormones to make the product that will help you sleep. So very simple things. Go and do this massage every second day. Drink this hot water with ginger in it, and get to bed by 10 o'clock. And they'll go, oh, all right.
Well,
Okay.
you're not going to give me drugs.
No drugs, no. And then 3-4 days later, the email will come, thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you. Yes, I'm sleeping so much better, and now I only wake once in the night. You know, and so the big change, often with very simple things when the situation is quite chronic. And it would be wonderful if these things could be incorporated along with, you know, other modalities as well, like general practice. And that's why I think integrative medicine is becoming more popular. And the doctors are looking to assist their clients in a more broad way by saying, yes, learn to meditate, so you're not worried, because when your mind doesn't settle, your body won't settle, and you can't sleep. So yes, great to meditate, but also great to nourish the physiology, settle down the Vata, and then that will help as well.
Fantastic. So we were talking about the 3 stages there. Is that what you call them?
Governing principles.
Governing
yes,
principles. I'm liking
yes.
this. Vata was one.
Vata.
Tell us about the other 2.
Okay, so Vata is the one that controls transportation and movement.
Yes.
And it's a predominance of space and air, the 2 elements of space and air. And Vata controls your nervous system, controls all the movement of food, your hearing, and it really looks after and nourishes everything in the physiology. It's to do with that principle of moving one thing from one place to another, but also I've got a bit lost. I don't need to say much more about that. I can go back and talk about. So that's Vata. So the other principle is Pitta. So in Pitta, it's more to do with fire and water, and it controls your digestion and metabolism.
Right, that makes sense.
So everything you see and everything that you eat, everything that you think about has to be metabolized.
Right.
All your emotions, all your ideas, everything you're exposed to must be metabolized. And so it's Pitta which looks after this predominantly. And it's mainly in your digestive system around your liver, but it looks after your blood and your eyesight, your skin, and those qualities will show up as not going so well if your Pitta's out of balance.
Right. Okay.
So someone who has a lot of energy and a lot of dynamism, has a lot of pitta in their nature, and they may have a reddish colour in their skin, and you may find that they say, I see, because they're predominated by vision,
Right,
by
by
eyesight.
vision, right.
And so they have that high in their nature. And so they have certain things that their personality will be like. They might be a bit of a pitta perfectionist. They might like things to be a bit orderly, everything in
Right.
its place. These kind of qualities come, and they're natural within that personality of the person which has a high predominance of pitta. And that's great, they have their place. The other one is kapha.
Kapha.
Kapha is to do with earth and water. Now, if you mix earth and water together, you get mud.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, you get mud. But you can dry mud out and make a brick and build a whole house. And in that sense, it's to do with building up the structure of the physiology. And so they usually have a lovely structure. They have lovely strong bones, and it builds up the adipose tissues and the sinews and the muscles and the fibres and the tissues of the body. And they can overbuild and become a bit heavy if they've got out of balance kapha. But generally, these people will also be very patient, very nurturing, very warm, very gentle people who have that more motherly quality quite lively within them. They can be it's like an elephant, they go slowly. They might learn slowly, but they never forget. And so there's a different personality to that person if they're predominated by pitta or kapha or vata. And so each of us have all three, but set at conception and determined by the balance of those three doshas, as we call them, these guiding principles, in the parents, will be a certain type of constitution that suits you. It's like a thermostat.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
your thermostat is set to pitta kapha, and that's you, and mine is set to vata pitta, and that's me. And when my vata and my pitta are in the balance they're meant to be with less kapha, I'm my personality.
Right.
My personality is its best qualities, and my physiology is balanced and it's functioning smoothly, and my mind and my body work together, and the whole thing goes very well. And that's for me, and that's slightly different to you. So if we were to share a meal, we'd want to eat different things,
Yes.
and what's healthy for me isn't healthy for you.
Right, and vice
And that's
versa.
okay.
Yeah, I get that. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And I'm assuming it's not about, one mould fits all. It's not about getting
No.
everyone to be balanced in all those things. It's about finding the balance that's right for them.
It's about knowing what your underlying constitutional type is, that balance of how much vata, how much pitta, and how much kapha is there and was there when you were born, set at conception. And so these principles relate to endoderm, ectoderm, and mesoderm, the germ layers at conception. And so the balance of those is there. Now, over time, because of our lifestyle and the way we're treating our physiology and what we put into it, what it sees, we can change that. And we can become so out of balance that we think that that's us. And it's not. And so it is sometimes difficult to understand your constitutional type. Once we know what it is, then we know what is essentially good for us, what foods will suit our physiology, and what will be enjoyed. So there's two things you need to learn, and we can do this by taking the pulse.
I was about to ask you.
Yeah,
how this
we can
is
take the
done,
pulse
yeah.
and we can feel what's the underlying balance that's the natural state for this person. And then what is it now? And there might be some differences.
Right. So you can actually tell from the pulse where they should be and where they're actually at.
Yeah, we can see the underlying essential nature of the person, and we can see what the balance of the three doshas is now. And so then we might say, okay, you're a pitta kapha, but maybe there's a bit much kapha. Too much at the moment. Or maybe your vata's come up and it wasn't meant to be very much vata at all. So it might have been 30% vata, and maybe about 50% would have been pitta, and maybe the other 20% might have been kapha.
Right.
But at the moment, it's not quite in balance. So that part is the imbalance. Good, we've identified that. So now let's implement some things that will bring that into balance. And there may be some other areas in the doshas that are not working so well. So we need to enliven those. So we enliven these, we balance those, and we bring everything back to that thermostat, that balance that's you.
Wow.
Then you'll feel completely at home. Your physiology will work beautifully, and your mind and your personality traits will be in touch. And so you'll find your dharma, you'll know what to do in your life because all your personality traits are there. So you know what it is you're good at. what you want to do with your life. And so you'll start painting again, or whatever it is. You'll start playing music again, would be my guess from your body type.
Yes.
And you'll enjoy that very much because it has that certain quality that's
Yes, very true. Spot on about the music. I didn't know there was a body type for a musician, though.
there. No, there isn't, but I can tell. So yeah, we can tell. There's actually people called osteoviges, which means, Vajra means a doctor, and osteoviger is a person who just by looking, just by seeing the slight tilt of the head this way and this and that and the other, they can see what it is that person, where is the imbalance in the physiology.
Oh, right. Fascinating. Now, is that something you also specialise in? Or
No, I
is
don't.
that,
I won't profess to be. Especially, although it is part of what we do when we're diagnosing. We can see often, with the person, the way that they're operating, the way they're thinking. We can see what's going on in their physiology. Our body is an outside expression of the intelligence that's inside it. And so it does show on our faces, in our behaviour, the way we hold our body, what's going on in our physiology.
That makes sense. I know, having done a lot of energy work with people over the years, in the early days people would come in and I'd sort of be trying to look and trying to see and stuff. And now I got to a point after 20, 30 years, whatever it is now, people would walk in and it's just there straight away. I don't even have to think. It's like, oh yeah, you need this, that and that. I'm sure it's probably something similar for you as well.
It is, but it's become more a skill. For instance, I'm doing a lot of teaching in the corporate area.
Right.
And so when you're meeting new people, which I'm doing all the time in every area of life, we all do, but understanding how that person's going to think. If I'm dealing with a person who's obviously more predominated by Vata, then I know they'll be very imaginative. They'll come up with great ideas, but they probably won't be able to put them into play.
Right.
I know also that they'll worry a bit. And so there'll be a tendency for worry and anxiety, and they might need to be given different sort of knowledge and understanding to settle that down.
Right. I
also know that they'll be forgetful. And lots of quick impulses into the nervous system of a Vata person with a lot of Vata, and their memory won't be so good.
Right.
So I might need to write it down or give less instructions, just one thing at a time.
Keep it simple.
Even if they're female, I might have to give one thing at a time. So, these sort of things are there. If there's a person in front of me who's more pitta, well, I wouldn't want to be sort of doing anything offensive towards them just before lunchtime when they're hungry, because they've got that strong digestion and they'll be getting revved up and they could become angry and upset.
Right.
So, you deal with people differently.
Because there's that need for the food.
Food.
Right.
Give me food. I've got strong digestion.
Stop
I've got a lot of
talking to me,
metabolism.
give me food,
Just feed the man food. It's like that, So it's like, I won't make an appointment with you at midday. I'll see you at 2:00.
Yeah, after it's digested.
After you've eaten food, or maybe we'll meet for lunch. We won't talk till we've eaten. This kind of thing, if someone who's very predominated by kapha, they come in, they can only take in a small part of information at a time, and they don't want to make a lot of change. Kapha is very steady, like an elephant. It just goes along, very stable, very steady, one thing at a time, and it's very stable but doesn't want to change as much.
Right.
And so what will happen is they can integrate a piece of information and then they'll come back for another piece of information. Too many changes at once and they just won't be able to change. So understanding those principles of Ayurvedic medicine really helps you to work with other people in your family. They'll all eat differently. They'll all want different food, and the child who has Vata will say they want salt. The one who has a lot of kapha will say, I don't want the salty food. I want something spicy, warming and heating to get me moving. And you certainly wouldn't want to feed that to the pitta one. Lots of spicy food into that fiery stomach,
Yes,
and you might get an explosion. So that one probably needs something different again. So it's good to know how to feed your family. It's also good to know how to deal with different people in your business life. Different employees, different people in our lives that we have to deal with in relationships.
And I can imagine understanding yourself and those people on that level would just sort of remove a lot of the stress out of a lot of situations as well, which takes us back to where we started.
It does.
The stress in life, which leads us to have imbalances.
But when we're actually in balance, when our doshas are in balance, when our tissues are nourished, when our body's functioning normally and our mind is at peace, then only then do we have good health. So it's a very holistic thing, this thing of health. It's called swastha, and it means established in self. Established in yourself Then you go out and perform action. And then you perform action with that sweetness of tone and that lightness of heart and that openness of consciousness that takes in new things and accommodates all the differences between people. Thank goodness, or we'll all be the same.
Yes, exactly. We wouldn't want
And
that.
we're not. And Ayurveda understands we're not all the same. And that's the really great benefit. So when you go and see your acupuncturist, or when you go and see your podiatrist, or when you go and see your doctor, they're tending to think that you're a human being. And they treat you like that. Maybe age or sex type you, but this is body typing you.
Yeah.
And it really means that you can be far more accurate in thinking about the way that anything, even food, is going to affect that person. The time of day is going to affect that person. The season is going to affect that person. And understanding that makes it much more easy for us to accommodate everybody and to make everybody healthy, using more primary basic fundamentals of health that are available in Ayurveda, because they're implemented in such a way that makes them extremely powerful.
Indeed. Well, look, once again, it's always incredibly informative having you in here. Thank you so much for coming in again.
Thank you.
And if people want to contact you, how can they best do that?
They can probably best contact me via the website, morningtonmeditation.com.au. I'm also doing a women's health seminar on the 20th in Mornington, so if they want to know about Ayurveda, then they can come in for 3 or 4 hours and get this kind of knowledge for themselves and use it, or have a personal consultation.
Fantastic. Suzanne, thank you very much for
Thank you,
coming on
Steve.
Soul to Soul.
Thank you.
It's very good. I'm really fascinated. This is one side of things I've not.
Oh, you haven't
looked
got into? Okay.
And that's why I'm quite fascinated by it. Yeah.
There's a really good website I put together, ayurveda.org.au. And it gives, you can actually go in, and this is the same on most of the websites, even on mine, and that you can fill out a questionnaire, and it'll tell you how much vata, how much pitta, how much kapha.
Oh, good, because I was going to say I'm very curious to find that out.
Yeah, to work out what your
myself.
body type is. Yeah. And it'll kind of tell you partly your nature and partly your imbalance, because you're so familiar with your imbalances, they become part of your nature.
Right.
But it'll give you a fairly good idea, and whichever is the highest score will be the one that's the most predominant. And you'll go, oh, okay, yeah, so this is the one that I've got the most issues with. So you look after that one. So you take Vata pacifying tea, and you take, Vata pacifying diet, Vata pacifying routine, and it's all there on that website.
Because I was thinking, like for example, I might have cravings for, ice cream, for argument's sake, but that might be completely off type. It might be just bad habits I've picked up over the years. So
there's also a thing called okasatmia. Okasatmia means that food which is part of your culture or your childhood when you grew up, and it's attached to things, like it might be lamb roast for you. And lamb roast means mother's love.
Right.
So lamb roast is good for you. Lamb roast ain't so good for me. I'm vegetarian.
I was going to say it doesn't work for me very well either.
But you know what I mean, like meat pie and sauce is probably good for a lot of tradies,
exactly.
It's something that they go, yes, that's that thing, that's my culture, whereas another culture would go, what's this thing you're eating? It doesn't make sense to me. And so it's okasatmia. So sometimes it's that way, and there might be some memory with eating ice cream. But often it's just the sweetness, lighten up your amygdala, baby, and you're going, yes, that feels good, bring it on. And so that's sometimes the way it is.
Right.
But sweet food pacifies Vata dosha. And so often when we're out of sorts, maybe we're travelling or we're tired, we're under time pressure, Vata comes out of balance. And then we'll desire a flavour that looks after that dosha.
Right.
And what pacifies Vata is sweet, salty and sour, naughty and oily. Now, if you think of chocolate chips, ice cream, lollies, they're all naughty, naughty inherently. They're all oily, they're all very sweet.
Yes.
And so when our nervous system's getting out of balance, and Vata, which is the most common thing we have out of balance, overstimulation, fatigue, too much, then we look for something sweet.
Right.
It's the body innately in our genes knowing, I need to pacify this thing, and the way to do this is to find something sweet, preferably sweet and oily and heavy and naughty. So chocolate's perfect, or whatever. Now the ice cream is cold, so it's even worse for the vata.
Right.
So I would usually say to people, have a date. You know, a nice big medjool, fat, juicy date, because it's heavy, it's very sweet, and it'll pacify your vata. And also some tea with hot water in it, ginger, will pacify it, and you won't need to eat the chocolate or the sugar or whatever.
Yes. Good call, actually.
So sometimes just basic knowledge like that is really useful of the doshas, and you can just go in and have something that will take the edge off and do what the nervous system wants. Otherwise, it's going to keep you eat the meal, you're full, and you go, but now I need something sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you eat food that's frozen, processed, reheated, you're going to have a very stale energy.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
If you eat food that's very fresh, and I'm not saying raw, raw isn't always best, and in Ayurveda usually not recommended. Just to break it down a bit makes it more bioavailable. It makes it easier to digest and get the goodness from it, but not processing it a lot.
So, not big on raw. Is that because of the amount of processing that's required to consume that?
Yeah, it's not what's on the plate. It's what ends up in your blood.
Right, right.
So on the plate, scientifically, looking at that surface layer of the food, you would say, oh, well, the raw carrot has more goodness in it.
Yeah.
Has more A's, B's, C's, more enzymes. The cooked carrot has less. But then if you would look at, don't forget the process, once it goes through your system, then what's going to happen is how much of that goodness are you going to get into your bloodstream?
Yes.
More from the cooked carrot than the raw carrot.
Right.
But less from the carrot that's been pre-steamed and then frozen and come out and been microwaved, very little.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It's just that we forget about the processing and we don't look after digestion, and it's the cornerstone of Ayurvedic medicine is digestion.
Fantastic. I think we were in one mind on this one. Yeah?
I think so, absolutely. We're all in one giant mind.
Exactly, yeah. Soul to soul.